And here we are for the penultimate day for Final Fantasy XIV Dawntrail. I last left off right before doing the level 99 dungeon, the Origenic. So I'm very excited because that means that day 6 will be the final day of me playing through Dawntrail. So the first thing that happened is that we did the train bomb sequence, which was super fun. I would have loved to play that out because I think that would have been a lot more fun. We bombed the Vanguard and we start to go approach the Vanguard, which was going to be our next dungeon, level 97 dungeon. And that dungeon was so awesome. For one, the music was absolutely incredible. Such amazing music, really cool environments. I particularly love the design of, you could actually like see up close the design of all the technology, and it feels so much different than Elegance. Like once you actually go through it and explore, it's definitely like just way different than Elegance. I also love how hectic that entire dungeon was, where so many enemies had abilities of like AoE attacks or like range attacks that were line of sight. So you just saw like hundreds of patterns on the floor and you had to dodge it, which leads to one of my favorite bosses in that dungeon, which was the second boss, where it was just like setting up fences. It was shooting lasers all throughout and you're like, I can't find a safe place to stand in this dungeon. It was like a ton of fun. And yeah, the whole dungeon was so much fun. And then you actually face against the final boss, who actually ends up being human, which actually was very surprising. And then what they had on their head was a regulator similar to Zorojaw. And what we learned about those regulators not only allow you to imbue the person who's wielding it with like a beast soul, similar to what we've seen with Zorojaw, or similar to what we've seen with this dude here, where they can actually transform into the being if they have enough of those souls. But then we also learn that as we defeat and finish the Vanguard, we visit a place called Heritage Found, which you just see the darkness in the sky, all the lightning constantly shooting down. These people are trying to live within these harsh conditions. And a lot of these people, including people who are from Tololia, have these regulators on them. And these regulators help keep their happiness up by, like, let's say if they die, they're able to come back to life because it's using souls. And if someone else in their life dies and they're no longer able to be resurrected, the name of that person disappears, so they don't have to feel the suffering and pain of death, which was really messed up because we also just ran into Namaka at that time, and that was super depressing. But either way, Heritage Found was just a really fascinating location because, you know, we are seeing this area in Urnville's perspective. And so when we first go there, we're just mystery. We're like, wait a minute, this place wasn't even built 3 years ago. How is it already decrepit? How is it already falling apart? We're trying to figure out and trying to understand everything that's going on. We see all this lightning in the sky. We see these towers here. And what we later come to realize is that this is what the Ashians were referring to when they meant the rejoining. What we realize is that this area somehow the merging of two different reflections at once. And this happened to be a greater area than Graha has ever seen. And I'm like, what the hell? In fact, the biggest reveal was that when people were mentioning like, oh yeah, what happened? That happened like 30 years ago. And we're like, what do you mean 30 years ago? And I really appreciate is that after that 30 years later, something happened to where the connection between the barrier that was created and the outside of the world and the source like connected together, which resulted in the Alexandria being like temporally connected with the source. So now the time will no longer flow faster there than it is out here. So that was really fascinating to listen to. We also got to meet a character, Safine, the Queen of Alexandria, and she was such an interesting character, because throughout the entire situation, the game does a really good job about this. It's like they really make you feel suspicious of her, where she's always happy, she's always excited, she's like, oh, I want to protect my people, all these things. But anytime we ask her like specific questions, she like wears her heart on her sleeve, and then she's just like, well, that's great. And then she's like, and you're like, can we help you with something? You know, she was like it was very obvious that she felt uncomfortable with a lot of the situation that was happening with everyone. In fact, somehow Zoraja became king and she was queen, and somehow also Zoraja had a child, and that was also baffling. I don't know how that man wanted to. Either way, she was very interesting. We end up learning that she is an endless, which means that when someone dies, their soul gets taken and they extract the memories from the soul so that the soul becomes pure so that other people can use it to live longer lives. But those memories could also be imbued into other people, which obviously for the Queen of Alexandria, they just imbued it into another body. We also meet a character named Otis, who is also the same thing. We also meet Ernville's mother, who I believe is also an endless. We have yet to know, but given the most recent line of questioning that Ernville gave of like, you knew that Selvine was a endless, you didn't tell us, and then it looked like he wanted to ask if you were also an endless, because constantly every time Ernville asked like, hey, when can I see you? When can I see you? And she's like, don't worry, I'm safe. And originally I was thinking, oh, she's like remotely connecting to the cloud, right? Because the cloud is where they store all the memories. But now it seems more closely that she is like an endless, very similar to, well, no, not an endless. She is her entire soul is inside this bot, much like Otis, because Otis is not an endless, because once they die, once that body dies, they're gone forever, right? Similar to a flesh body. Whereas Zephine, she's an endless because even though a body will die, she can still move to different bodies because of the soul. The way the soul thing works. I'm not quite sure. Oh, this was also really interesting. So one of the questions that Wuklamont asks is like, oh, you didn't purposely come to Tyrolia. And then you just see her go, oh, no, that face, you're like, that face is more certainly, she definitely chose to go there. And eventually we do end up learning that, yes, she wants to prolong the life of her people. In order to do that, she needs more souls, she needs more life. And how do you do that? You take souls from other people. And so that's why she went and attacked Tyrolia. So I was very happy about that, just because I was so suspicious with her the entire time that I was like, really like, there is something weird with this girl and she's not telling us the truth. So the fact that she ends up revealing to be evil is really cool. Obviously, I only describe it as evil just because of she's like very similar to Baku Jaja, where like she is put in a situation that she feels she has no way out, and that the only way she can achieve is by killing other people. Like that's kind of how she feels in that way. And so if we could resolve that issue, she'll no longer want to be evil kind of situation. However, with Zoraja, I don't think that's the case. It's very interesting though, because I'm curious how her writing is going to continue. Obviously, I think it's safe to assume that she's going to live and that she's going to continue ruling over Solution 9 well after Zoraja. But it's like, at the same time, it's like, we can't just let her free. We can't just let her go. She has to be punished in some way. Whether that is we give Solution 9 a different ruler, maybe it's no longer under a monarch, maybe Oblivion takes over. Either way, it's like, I don't know how we can truly redeem Zephine. Aside from that, we got to visit a place called Solution 9. After visiting all the different villages and towns in Tyrol, and you go to Solution 9 and you're like, this is like so bland and sterile. And I'm not sure if that is purposely done because Alexandria is meant to be like this, like, oh, nothing bad happens here. It's all perfect just for you. And maybe that's why it feels so stale and feels so lack of life. I would not say I'm disappointed with Solution 9 because I didn't really have any anticipation for Solution 9. But I also just didn't expect Solution 9 to be as bland and sterile as it could. I didn't mention this in my stream, but an issue that every game has, it's every game that has this, when you have a massive city like Solution 9 where you can see buildings upon buildings upon buildings, it really feels like a video game area, because it's like, well, obviously it's a video game, so you can only visit like this small section, and here it is. But you can still see the vast amount of buildings that you could visit if it was the real world, but because it's a video game, you just see this stuff. And it's like, oh, it makes it less interesting or fun to explore, because when you visit like the rest of Tyrol, when you see a village, when you see a city, you're like, oh, I can go throughout the entire city. Sure, you can't enter every building, that's fine. But you can at least you can go through the entire city and go like, I've explored all of this building. But when you look at Solution 9, it's like, oh my God, you can only visit like this small little tiny section of it. And it's like, ugh. We also had the dope cutscene with the second attack on Tuliyola. And that was incredible. the plan of like when Wuklamont was like, it's like, look, I'm not the only Dawn servant. And then we see the entire plan that they had planned. We got Vitra showing up. God damn, dude. What a freaking amazing way of just showcasing the power of people coming together to fight for their nation. It's just so cool. It's just so cool to see that entire cutscene. So I greatly enjoyed that. But yeah, that's really it from the stream. I know I try to keep these videos a bit shorter than usual just because it honestly, editing these every day is definitely a tough one. And ultimately, you're here to listen to my opinions, right? You're not here to get a book report of what happened. So I'm just here to kind of like highlight some of my favorite moments. And that's it for me. I'm very happy to have played some Final Fantasy Dawntrail. Definitely, I will say, don't expect future. If you're like, oh, I can't wait for you to stream more Dawntrail after the MSQ. Look, I've done my share of full-time streaming from Dawntrail expansion. I will be doing more discussion videos, so I would like to do more of these kind of videos in the future. But I think I will refrain from doing very many of these crazy stream stuff. But thank you, hey, for watching and listening to me as I go through day 5 of Dawntrail. Okay, that's it for me. Time to edit this. Goodbye now. Bye-bye.